Well, welcome viewers. J.W. Ayub, Dr. J.W. Ayub, theologist since 1994. We're in Muhammad, so near the revelation, so far from the Saviour. Episode 38, when death started looking holy. Viewers, the atmosphere no longer merely honours devotion now. It increasingly honours disappearance for the proclamation itself. That is the shift overtaking the movement from within. A younger follower listens silently while several men speak beneath exhausted torchlight about those who never returned from violent confrontation surrounding the movement. Nobody speaks about them mournfully anymore. The room speaks about them reverently, almost enviously. One speaker describes a fallen man not as a tragic, but as elevated beyond ordinary believers, still attached to earthly life itself. Several listeners absorb the account with visible intensity, not because human beings naturally glorify death, because the atmosphere has increasingly fused annihilation for the proclamation with eternal significance beyond ordinary existence itself. And that transformation matters enormously, viewers, because ideological systems accelerating toward fanaticism eventually stop treating survival as morally valuable. They begin treating willingness to disappear violently for the movement as spiritually transcendent. And the degeneration deepens there, not through immediate mass extremism initially, but through emotional conditioning, through admiration structures, through repeated glorification directed towards those who surrender themselves completely for collective destiny itself. One follower quietly experiences shame after privately fearing death during discussions surrounding sacrifice and honour. Another increasingly envies those publicly remembered for dying fearlessly because martyrdom itself now appears spiritually superior to ordinary faithfulness still connected to earthly attachment. Viewers, the structure inside Muhammad's proclamation is changing existentially now. Survival increasingly appears ordinary, temporary, lesser, and spiritually incomplete. The movement no longer merely regulates belief, identity, obedience, and sacrifice. It increasingly regulates meaning, honour, eternal significance, and the perceived value of life itself. A quieter man notices how quickly emotionally intense personalities now describe violent death for the proclamation with admiration instead of grief. Another intensifies outward fearlessness because visible willingness to disappear for the movement increasingly functions as proof of purity, strong enough to silence suspicion surrounding him. Nobody openly says death for the proclamation is glorious. Nobody needs to, viewers. The atmosphere already teaches that. The pressure grows heavier there, viewers, because once martyrdom becomes psychologically fused with eternal prestige, human beings slowly begin competing through willingness to annihilate themselves for collective certainty itself. Several men now compare righteousness through willingness to bleed, suffer, advance, sacrifice, and vanish completely if necessary for Muhammad's proclamation. One speaker warns that attachment to earthly life weakens the movement from fulfilling the destiny unfolding around it. And the room absorbs the warning immediately, not cautiously, passionately, reverently, hungrily. Viewers, one follower now experiences guilt merely for still valuing ordinary life, privately. Another increasingly believes that if death for the proclamation earns immortal honour, then preserving oneself may itself represent spiritual weakness unworthy of true devotion. The degeneration is accelerating catastrophically now, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, physically, civilizationally. And perhaps, viewers, this becomes one of the most defining transitions in the trajectory ahead. People increasingly stop asking whether violent death should remain tragic and begin asking whether total self-erasure now represents the highest form of spiritual achievement possible. And the movement no longer merely promises belief. It increasingly promises immortal meaning through sacrificial disappearance itself. And viewers, once glory becomes psychologically attached to annihilation for ideological transcendence, extremist fatalism itself can rapidly begin appearing morally beautiful, long before people recognize how completely the atmosphere has consumed ordinary human conscience itself. But viewers, beneath the escalating devotion surrounding these men, the mystery of the Messiah still remains untouched and unresolved. I'm Dr. JWA, theologist since 1994. Like, subscribe, comment to educate me, share to help somebody else, and I'll see you in the next episode when human life started losing its value.